of Freedom. Yes, I did a little out of the theater reaction, but I want to kind of get a little deeper into the film, talk about some of the other characters and elements that I really, really liked, why I think the film is resonating, give you some thoughts on the topic at large, and also point out some of the film's flaws and shortcomings. Because I don't want the film to get like overtly um, overhyped and then people to be disappointed because it's still a small budget indie type film. It's very simplistic in its nature. It's telling a story and it's not that as unique as they want it to be. This is why I'm so frustrated with this film is because the concept of trafficking and this has come up in other films. So Priceless is the one that comes to mind. It's a great film for King and Country's behind it. One of the, I think Ben Smallbone directed it. Joel Smallbone is starred in it. I thought it was very good. Also based on real life stuff, right? Simplistic. This is it, right? The Sound of Freedom. It got legs at the right time. Jim Caviezel's name. Enough people got a big enough boom on ticket sales that it landed number one on 4th of July, couldn't be ignored by the mainstream press. You can't have something that big because they really did ignore Chosen. Chosen it was in theaters for special screenings and it made a lot of money. And the media just kind of shoved it out of the way, just to kind of ignored that it exists and that it made that sort of footprint. And here they didn't do that. I think everything about the film delivers on what they're trying to accomplish, right? Performances are strong, the topic is good, the script is fine. And for two-thirds to three-quarters, I have very minimal issues with the film. I think it's very, very good. Very good. So let me get right to some footage and just kind of use that as my sort of like soundboard to kind of like figure out how to uh, discuss certain things with you. So right out of the gate, this is one of the trailers. There's short and long ones. You could sort of get like this backdrop of what Tim Ballard's job is in Homeland Security. He's going after Fredos. He has this stereotypical guy on his computer, and you sort of like have this back and forth with another officer about like, why are we doing this? We're not rescuing anybody, right? And it's sort of the initial. It's not even the pivot on the crisis of faith. It's just the first phase. Now I will say there's some great moments in this. Then we kind of cut to basically third world countries, and we start to get one example of this family. She's singing. It gets heard by somebody. They show up at the door and it's sort of like hope arrives at the door, and dad takes and she sees the little boy, the little brother, and now there's hope, and they could be wealthy, they could get away from all this, and this is what she looks like. And of course they get sucked up and disappeared by the time they realize it. Now the story has been used in other ways. Like we've seen this with Blacklist, Criminal Minds, other movies, other shows that deal with this topic, at least at a cursory level. Hope in America, being lied to, those kinds of things. Okay. What gets great, I think, is that they focus. Well, first off, there's actual like real footage. By the way, these are actual like real children being taken in different scenarios. It's during that opening credit sequence, which is really, really moving. But here's one of the reasons it works. Jim Caviezel, he represents a lot of different elements in the film. First off, he has such a great gravitas with his eyes and emotions, and he conveys a lot even when he's not saying dialogue. And his dialogue can be very short, and he's kind of like lets it hang out there, and it really resonates well. But I think also he represents the audience journey into this process. Like we're following his story, but through his eyes, we're watching footage on videotape, even though we don't have to see it. We know how graphic that is. We can see through his eyes the frustration of this world. It needs help. This world is full of victims that need saving. These cartel people could help me. This money guy can help me. What can I do? You're seeing all of that done, and this is what the film does really, really well. It just immerses you in all of that, right? So during this process, he does find the clues to rescue a little boy named Miguel, the little boy. So he gets to Miguel, and Miguel has this necklace, which is Saint Timothy with Timoteo, because you save kids, right? Yes. So the kid gives it to him. So now you have this moral crisis of faith of go find my sister, go find the girl because she's not with him. And I think one of the reasons this become very political is because this bust, saving Miguel, involved an American, right? It involved evaluating a crisis that it took place in America versus this one, which took place overseas, right? Deal with an immigration crisis and the black van across the border and all of that has touched on some nerves, whereas this one is the one that nobody wants to talk about. By the way, the performances and all of these actors, especially this guy on the far right, my wife and I were both just like blown away at how good he was in this movie. He has some great, great scenes. I mean, is he supposed to be creepy? Yeah, he is. He pulls it off beautifully. Fantastic. So it's easier, if I think, for Americans to divorce this crisis when this is the pictures, this is the imagery, it's stuff that we're not in those countries, so we're not at risk. It's not our problem compared to this, which is the border crisis, which is something that comes up regularly in our general political conversations. It's black van, little kid inside, that type of stuff. And then we have Jim Caviezel looking at us like, I'm supposed to care about this kid that I don't know anything about. Now, let me get to Bill Camp. Bill Camp's performance at times is absolutely tremendous. I mean, it's fantastic. He's smoking on the cigar. He's cutting up enough jokes to give some levity to the film. And he tells a very heart wrenching story about his own thing. Like his own story is his heart wrenching story, his descent into darkness of what he was doing. He was contributing to the problem. This is a very difficult thing for the audience to hear because you start to go, am I contributing to the problem? Have I contributed to the problem? Now, he does talk about like, prostitution. Turns out this is a woman that's not a woman. She's a kid and she's been in this business for a very long time. It doesn't go quite to the topic of adult entertainment here in the States. We know what we're talking about on video, but it very much drives pretty close and it makes people feel very uncomfortable. They get defensive, false accusations. The only criticism I would have is Bill Camp's accent kind of comes and goes. It's very good early on, then it kind of disappears for a while. Then we get the whale. So the whale is the finance guy who likes to do these type of things. He enjoys sort of like the quasi celebrity of it, the thrill of doing this type of stuff. However, because the American government doesn't want to get involved, Tim involves him through this photo. And now we're all stuck because we are seeing this too. Forget the 50 kids, think about one, Rocio, age 11. And you're like, oh crap. So now even we are taken back to this journey with him in this and Miguel, the little boy, because now you're like, okay, now it's very personal. So don't worry about whether or not you're saving 10, 50, 100, 200, 300. Think about one. If you could just save one. And it becomes, again, we're in the audience now through the eyes of this man, torn with what could I do to save one? Now, the film does a great job. It mixes up lighting and different sets to give us a nice journey through this, and then puts us back in these quick little moments with him and his wife, who is just a rock. There's not a lot of Mira Sorvino, but when she's there, she's fantastic. But more importantly, it just shows how strong she must be to know that her husband does this. And she has this text, and I wish it's sort of like through the phone, and it's like I think of her as my kid too. Like she gets that connection that Tim is going through and why he needs to fulfill this mission. He has to quit Homeland, do this project, this company now, and invest in maybe his own life, saving these kids, particularly the one that's driving him. And she is there and rock solid, having it all together. And he needs that over and over again. We see it just play out so well. Um, so this takes place in the last half of the last third of the film, the final act of the film. So what ends up happening with the bus, which by the way, let me see if there's any other footage of that. That's worth note. I don't think this trailer had a lot of footage from um that gathering. It's what we saw earlier with the traffickers, right? We saw we see all of this. Like, how many can you bring in? They bring all these kids in, that kind of thing. This scene, and this is sort of the culmination of the film. And then we end up with the fact that, oh, the girl's not there. Now, what are you going to do? We have a lead. So, this is the police officer, the local Colombian official, who basically is explaining we can't go south of this point. That's controlled by the rebels. The little girl was sold to someone named Scorpion, and he's a rebel leader. I can't go with you. I can only take you so far. You'll have to pretend to be doctors and go down there, and then they separate them. So Bill Camp's character is separated, and you end up with this whole jungle battle for this little girl in her life. Can he find her and save her in time? That kind of thing. Um, it's tremendous. I will say that last jungle sequence. It there's it's too many. It's too full of too many contrivances. Like he's tiptoeing from seeing pieces to pieces behind everybody's back, and to get out. It's just it was fine. It again, it does show some of the elements of what does transpire and how this type of work exists and what people would have to go through to do rescues and save people. And the crisis is global. It's not really, there's no end in sight because we're not going to have control of some remote river area, where they're just shooting guns at a doctor who has vaccines, which is pretty much what they claim they are. So, just great stuff, great performances. Everything is the musical score is fantastic. I don't know if we talk about that enough, but the lighting design stuff's changed up very well. This is a movie that is batting way above its budget for $14 million. They didn't get every penny. They got like $45 million worth of film. They swung way outside of their batting average there. It's their money's worth times 10. The director did a great job, producer, everyone involved really did. And I'm very happy for them because I will say that during this, we saw some footage for other projects, whether it's through Angel Studios or Kingdom. I some of them look really pretty good, pretty good. So the thing that really bothers me both about all of this media pushback and all of that is they act like this is all new. Like this film is somehow brainwashing people, or now, oh, no one knew about it, so therefore it didn't, oh, they just think all this movie's a documentary and QAnon. I've heard all this nonsense. I'm like, okay, hold on. First off, this isn't the first time, right? There's been other projects and films and things like that have dealt with this. I've done a lot of research. I don't want to derail the conversation here. Um, it's just one of those things that come up. Like I said, it's come up in like um, um, other shows, like Criminal Minds and things like that. It's like it's completely nuts. I don't totally understand where that comes from and why that is the case. Now, I want to point out another film just briefly that I know a little bit about. Saw it, did a review on, and I just want to say this real quick. If you think that this movie is messed up, this one's called 8 Days. So Jocko Bullions did this film, and it's even on a lower budget than the one we've been talking about. It's called 8 Days, and basically the premise of the film is the girl is in like a suburban area, uh, gets roofied and disappeared into a hotel, and they're like, "How can we catch her in 8 days? Like, you have 8 days." Um, Shocking. And micro budget. Like, yeah. If you, I mean, 100 grand. Like, I don't even know how much he spent. He got nothing on this movie. This is a more like a VHS type quality, like a very low grade version of this topic that is in 2014. Okay. So I don't want to hear all this nonsense that no one's talked about all this. I've been writing in press for years. I can tell you there's always press releases around major sporting events like the Super Bowl talking about trafficking. There's trafficking awareness groups. They send out press releases. There's been arrests and busts of high profile people who get caught up in those. And, we don't know what happens with a lot of those court cases. That just kind of, I assume there's settlements out of court. I don't think it's really major jail time. I don't think most of these people were like they themselves are trafficking other humans. I think they got caught up in a night out and they were with a person. Yeah. So a film like this has a place and they have to deny it exists. They have to say, "Oh no, 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 this is all made up. It's a conspiracy theory. It doesn't go on whatever." Because if they don't, they have to kind of atone for why they're not talking about it. Why they didn't do their own movie. Why they haven't been doing their own TV series and stuff like that. Like, yes, they do it one episode in Blacklist and they go, "Oh yeah, yeah, we did it. We did an episode on that." It's like, "Uh-huh." But you didn't change the footprint. You have more agenda with Woman King, where you just manufacture story arcs and try to say all of that's fact and you're an ist if you don't agree with it. And then you try to say all of this is all fake and a lie because, oh, this creator and this producer, they believe these things, so therefore they're crackpots. I'm like, oh, no, no. This is why it's resonating. So that's my take on the film. I know I bounced around with a few other things in here as well. For those of you who don't know, this is like my third go at this. I did my theater thing. I did a whole nother video. My mic didn't work. I re-recorded this. So I feel a little discombobulated when that happens, but first world YouTuber problems. What do you want from me? I don't know what to tell you guys. I just enjoy hanging out. I just enjoy the fact that people are finding this is even a fluff movie. So talk about how excited I am that people are gravitating towards not only something that's good, but something that's thought provoking and interesting, culturally insignificant. I'm beside myself. So I love talking about this film. So anyway, thanks so much for hanging out with me for so long. I am Pops.
My favorite quality about Pops is that he's incredibly honest. At least you always know where you stand with Pops. So I like that about him. He's not passive aggressive. He's not sneaky that way. He'll give it to you straight down both barrels.
Yeah.